It'd be like the Mortal Kombat 2 where it was toasty, but instead it'd be canceled.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Let's
Welcome.
avoid that.
Let's try to avoid that. Welcome everyone to another edition of the Spoiler Room. Yes, it is another rated PC for pre-code film. And if ever there was an appropriate film to discuss pre-code films, I think tonight's film really ranks up there with the history of this film, which we will get to in a moment. It is 1930s Puttin on the Ritz, part of our Puttin on the Ritz month. And with me tonight, I have the wonderful crew member who keeps coming back for more, who here tonight to talk about this film is none other than Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you doing, sir?
I'm confused. I thought we were talking about the music video by Taco.
Well, then this is going to be a short episode. This is going to be a short episode. Wow.
No, I'm doing great.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about that, but this is Putting on the Ritz month, and the link between all these films, as you may have gathered, is because, yes, it involves the song Putting on the Ritz. So this one is where it came from, though. This is where Putting on the Ritz came from. So, Ian, if you wouldn't mind, give us a synopsis of Putting on the Ritz.
Well, it's the 1930s. I think it's New York. There's these two. I'm trying, Mark. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna get all of this wrong. This is just my impressions of what this movie is about.
Yeah.
There's these two singer-songwriter guys named Harry and Jimmy, and they're friends / business partners, and they've got some kind of a contract with a record company, and they get fired. AKA they quote unquote quit. Once Dolores, played by the lovely Joan Bennett, comes in, she's got a song that she wants to pitch. She doesn't know, she's not from this world, so she doesn't know how to do it. Harry takes a liking to her, takes it into the executive's office, and the guy's like, no. And so he's like, well, I believe in this song, and the guy's like, well, you can just go. And then Jimmy says, well, if he goes, I go. And all of a sudden they're out of a job. And then so the three of them set off to make their own fortune. Cut to, there are four of them now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, her best friend, yes.
Where did she come from, Mark? This is right off the bat.
She mentions it. She mentions that she was part of a vaudeville act with her friend, and that she wrote this song, and she wanted to, but were having trouble finding work, so that's why she wrote the song to try to get some money for her and her friend.
Right, but this is where we're going to talk about cuts and edits and pre-code stuff. But it's like I caught that bit, but like when we cut to some time later and they're all performing, there are all of a sudden four of them. Like, hey, we're striking out. It's the three of us together. I'm like, where'd this other lady come from? Whatever. So they're having some degree of success. They get this telegram saying, hey, we want you to come and perform either in Chicago or back in New York. I don't know what the hell's going on, but they only want Dolores and Harry as a duet. And so the quartet breaks up into two duos, Jimmy and Goldie. I don't know what their name.
Yeah, Goldie.
Yep. They go off and try and find their own fortunes, but they unfortunately end up destitute. But fame does not suit Harry well because he's an egotist. He loves the spotlight. He loves hogging it all for himself. He gets swept up in the glitz and the glamour of the high society folks who want him to come and perform for them. He eventually falls in with this ritzy crowd, mostly Teddy Van Rensselaer, played by Eileen Pringle. Now back to our food conversation, Mark. I'm hungry again. But anyway, she kind of seduces him into this world, even though she thinks he's a clown. Those are her words. And it all comes down to, can Harry be saved by love and lured away from fame to bring it back to the music? And there's a lot of musical numbers in this movie. Some of it was interesting. A lot of it was not. There's a longer cut of this movie. I frankly don't want to see it because I had trouble with the hour and 8 minutes that I did watch. Partially, I think mostly because of Harry, who looked to me like the love child of Bela Lugosi and Milton Berle. I could not get that out of my head. At the very end, when he's got these close-ups with our Dolores, he looked even more like the Joker, and it really freaked me out, like the man who laughs. I don't know what's going on, but that's my synopsis. I don't know how much they got right, but I'm sticking to
No,
it.
that's about right. I mean, it is only an hour and 8 minutes long. I the one of the things that's interesting is this is okay. So this is 1930, folk. The original cut was 1930. The only one that exists to date that I found in my research, and I'm kicking myself because I actually ordered the disc on Etsy because I thought maybe it was a copy that was the actual full version, but it's not. But it's coming from Australia. It's already on its way. It's delayed in shipping, but I got to
It was
see the
$4,000.
no, it wasn't 4,000. It was very reasonable. But in any case, so I did see the version on YouTube, which you saw as well. And yeah, it's interesting because you see this story and you realize that it is one of the early talkies. It's one of the early because a lot of the acting, many folks are still doing kind of their silent picture emoting. So everything is just a bit exaggerated with a lot of things with their performance, especially when we get to the final act dance number, which is Alice in Wonderland, which is there's a song. Actually, Irving Berlin wrote 3 songs in here. He wrote With You, which is the couple song between Harry and Joan. There's Alice in Wonderland, which is sang at the very end of the movie, and Puttin' on the Ritz, not by Taco, but it is sung by Harry with slightly different lyrics, which I thought was interesting because the lyrics that we're used to is, he mentions Harlem instead of where fashion sits. It's where Harlem sits, putting on the Ritz. I thought that it was interesting as well as a few other dialogue changes. But yeah, I would have loved to see the full version of this personally, even though this is a story we've seen before. Again, it is a 94-year-old story. So there's a lot of stories we've seen that come after this that are very similar about the rags to riches sort of story, but it overcomes the star, and then they have to have a bit of a redemption arc, which he does have in here. I mean, he does pay the price for his transgressions of ignoring his fiancee love Dolores and instead choosing the highfalutin society folks. He does get his comeuppance, so to speak.
It's a weird ending. This is the spoiler room, so I guess we can talk about it. But
We absolutely can talk about it. Yes,
he goes blind
from bad
because
whiskey.
Bad whiskey,
which
literally.
I do not have. I have popped my favorite drink. I have brandy old fashioned in a can. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but no, this is not bad whiskey. I will not go blind over this, unlike his whiskey.
I've heard blind drunk. Is that where that expression comes from? I
believe so, actually. I believe that's where the phrase blind drunk comes from, is from people, because back in the moonshine prohibition days, people would make whiskey or alcohol out of anything. And if it was bad whiskey or alcohol, it could make you go blind. And that's what happens to Harry in this. So,
yeah. And he goes through some kind of a recovery period. He's a whiz on the piano, so that doesn't slow him down that much. And he thinks he's going to have some kind of a revival. Meanwhile, Dolores has gone on to make quite a name for herself, and she's opening in this really kind of a fantastic production of Alice in Wonderland. I mean, it's not just a stage show. I mean, it's almost like Baz Luhrmann traveled back in time to 1930 Broadway and said, "Hey, let's do this up." But then Harry shows up with Jimmy. Jimmy's kind of helping him along, and he ends up doing a duet serenade of "With You" at the end of Alice in Wonderland with Dolores on the stage.
Right.
And they end up backstage together. He's trying to conceal his blindness from her. She figures it out. Jimmy kind of helps her, and she's horrified that he didn't tell her and everything. But then they end up together. I never got the feeling I don't think he has a redemption arc. I think he was struck blind, and if it weren't for that, he'd just be out doing the same thing that he was always doing. I mean, he didn't even want to tell his, the love of his life, ostensibly, the truth about his condition. So he's being kind of deceptive and sleazy up to the very end. But we're supposed to, because it cuts rather harshly to them kissing, and then credits were supposed to say, "Oh, this is a happy ending." I think it's a dark as hell ending.
well, no, well, he does get a little. I mean, he gets humbled by his blindness. I mean, so there is that. He's humbled by his blindness. He realizes his mistake, that he should have just focused more on Dolores. That's why he reluctantly goes to the play. Initially, he doesn't want to go there because he doesn't want to her to see him blind, but also he just doesn't want to hurt her. He figures she's moved on. So,
doesn't he have a chance of regaining his sight? I thought there was something in there about that.
They said that it is possible, but remotely, but the doctor was not, they're more trying to comfort him and keep him from freaking out, I think, than him actually getting his sight back. I don't think there was ever actually a chance of him getting his sight back.
But he doesn't know that because he's a massive egotist. So I can't trust I can't trust anything unless the doctors tell him you will never see again. Then I could buy some level of humility. But I can see that guy saying, yeah, this sucks, but it's a setback. I'm gonna be right back up in the limelight and schmoozing with the Van Renslers.
Well, it is, and we'll get back to the Alice in Wonderland skit, but it is, you watch this film and it does, the story is at least cohesive enough, but you're right. There's a number of jumps in here and such to make you wonder exactly what the hate, because I even tried to look for a list of things that the Hays Code found of why it was trimmed, because the 1930 version was an hour and 28 minutes or something like that. And then after the Hays Code, it got, hour and 28 minutes. It had 20 minutes cut out of it. Literally 20 minutes cut out of this film before it was shown in the 50s on, I think it was on TV. It was shown, it got cut down, but they said that the stuff removed didn't follow the Hays Code, and that footage is lost to history. Unfortunately, there is only this known version, and I would love to see the full version. If nothing else, while this isn't the most exciting story, and like I said, it's material we've definitely seen before, I would have loved to see what was cut. It makes me wonder if it was some risky dance numbers, if it was, maybe some love scenes, perchance, some portrayal of some characters. It's hard to say because they do piece it together enough for it to tell a story, but yeah, there are chunks missing. You could tell there are chunks to where suddenly these characters are, wait, what? But like you said, her friend is now a major, while she's mentioned, we don't get any type of introduction. The next time we see them, she's already, like you said, they're already performing, and you're like, wow, they got work that quick.
What? And from what we've talked about with of the Hays Code with Mr. Randazzo, who couldn't join us tonight, he was, I think both of you were talking about how you didn't even have to show anything explicit. A lot of times it came down to even things that were inferred. So, when we do catch up with this quartet early on, you could imagine that there's something like, maybe Jimmy and Goldie got into a relationship with each other outside the bonds of marriage, which is not, kind of kosher pickles. The dancing, that's entirely possible. It's something more risque, especially as Harry gets, higher and higher and more elaborate shows. You could see him, scantily clad women, dancing in fishnets. Oh my gosh. But yeah, it's 20 minutes is a lot, and it doesn't seem like the story here spreads thin over an hour and 8 minutes, because there's a lot of musical numbers. I honestly kind of zoned out, because aside from Alice in Wonderland, a lot of this is very strict, like not supper club, but like high society dinner theater where you've got a guy on stage and he's just singing, and it's not filmed particularly dynamically. You can almost put it on the background as like, oh, here's the musical number. It's like Muzak, and then come back when the story resumes. It's not exciting, except for the Alice in Wonderland thing.
Yeah, which actually I believe they reused that footage for an actual Alice in Wonderland movie later on. Yeah, I do believe so. I'd have to look up trivia again, because there wasn't much about this, and that's why I found this film fascinating, and I think it's very appropriate for our rated PC for pre-code films, because this is one that is the one when you hear people talk about uh, lost films or lost stuff from the earlier ages of film. This is a classic example of how stuff was made. People put work behind things and it's lost to the ether because it's just gone. Yeah, and in fact, the Alice in Wonderland segment was actually in color because they were going to do the Alice in Wonderland in color. But according to trivia, the last reel, which had 953 feet of two-stripe Technicolor, it was only survived in black and white. They lost the color part of it as well, which if you then think about Disney, and its play with Wizard of Oz, where you think of its play with black and white versus color, as well. They were going to do the same thing here for this Alice in Wonderland large production number, and unfortunately the color reels were lost and they could only get black and white.
And this would have beaten it by about a decade. I mean, that's pretty astounding.
Yeah.
But I will say there are a couple of things related to the musical numbers that I thought were pretty cool. Like there's a stage production kind of earlier on after this quartet is doing these kind of shows on the road, and they come up against a very belligerent audience who aren't really having Harry and his highfalutin ambitions. And at one point he challenges. He said, "Look, you guys want to, whoever wants to can come up and fight me." And every guy in the audience does that dramatic, you're talking about silent film. This is like the cartoonists like taking off their jackets, and coming up to the stage. And I have not seen this. It may be a trope, and I'm just not aware of it. It took me by surprise, pleasantly so. They're up on the stage. Jimmy, I think, and some of the other people have rushed out to Harry's aid just as like the guys are coming up on stage, and before someone can swing a punch, the second backdrop, the giant kind of curtain or screen, falls down in front, separating the attackers from Harry and his friends, kind of creating this barrier. It doesn't last very long because one of the guys gets punched through the back of the head. But I thought that was kind of an exciting, like, oh, this is an interesting out, because I think a fight's about to happen, but then this thing drops and it's a total surprise.
Yeah, it was a total surprise, and I like that segment. It makes me wonder if there was more bits like that throughout the film that maybe were cut, that maybe were a little salacious, because there's nothing really, when you watch this story, there's nothing too salacious about the story itself to where I'm like, what was cut? I am so just baffled, and it's gonna it bugs me, not just the cinephile in me, but as just a regular movie watcher as well, looking at this going, what was cut? Because the way the story is, and especially some of the other 30s films that we saw that did not get the chop shop treatment that we've watched, you look at those and you're like, wait, that copy is still around, but this one just died. It's really crazy to think what was it about this one that made them chop it so poorly?
Only two things I can think of, and it opens up all these different possibilities, because there's 20 minutes missing. We kind of jump around to the point where they're walking out, the trio then becomes a quartet, and then they're kind of going on this journey before they split up. I could just see like maybe there's a side plot involving the mob because they're broke and they're having to deal with all these like kind of shady venues. Maybe they didn't want to show gangsters in a kind of romantic light or something like that, even a comedic one. The relationship between Harry and Teddy is very strange, because at first you think, oh, they're having an affair because she keeps talking to this one guy. I thought that was her husband, and it might turn out that it is, but there's some kind of a weird exchange they have where it's implied that they're not actually cheating with each other. I think it's just she's stringing him along. But how far along is that stringing going, really? I think there's some missing stuff in there too, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think there's some missing implications of her maybe leading him further on, some scenes with them alone or something, with while he's drunk or whatnot.
Well, because when she calls him a clown, you almost get the feeling that she's caught by her husband or whoever this person is. Like, oh, they've actually been screwing, but in order to save face, she's like, oh, I'm just having fun with them. There's nothing going on here. But then she's quick to realize that her position in high society is in jeopardy, so she will throw him under the bus.
Right, she throws him under the bus, and then Dolores as well. She comes from the streets, so to speak. She comes from the vaudeville and more of a sass to her. So when she stands up for Harry and throws a drink on the ritzy one, Harry gets all upset, and that's what kind of leads them to split up initially before he has the bad whiskey and goes blind. Because she embarrassed him. And yeah, it's just, there's gotta be relationship stuff that they cut. You're right. There's gotta be some kind of thing where he's trying to play it innocent to where, well, no, I just have to hang with these people because this is how we get money. But maybe there's more. Yeah, it's a real weird enigma because Dolores stays, true to her man throughout this whole thing. So it's Harry who's the bad guy in this. And it's just an enigma, his relationship with the rich folks. I'm wondering if that's where a lot of it was cut.
Also, it's 1930, it's New York. Again, someone needs to make a supercut of this or something. Maybe you can do it with AI. I want to see a scene where Dolores is walking to that record company, that building, and she passes a fruit stand just as Ann Darrow is reaching for the apple.
She goes to reach for the apple, but instead, Fay Ray shows up and she grabs the apple first from the girl. There you go. And
oh my God! And at the end, they Harry's alcoholism prevents Harry and Dolores from playing this giant event that's being put on by a film producer, Jack Denning or whatever the hell his name was. Like they just missed being crushed by the giant ape.
They just missed it. They were going to have their big break, but then their big break ends up getting postponed for this even bigger event going.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We've got a King Kong supercut. There we go.
Ann Darrow can serenade King Kong with you.
Yeah. Look at it. Wow. Oh man, we got ourselves putting on the Kong,
Done.
King Kong on the Ritz. I mean, we could spin this a number of ways and fill out that 20 minutes. Well, you think about 20 minutes too. That's a whole act.
It's a lot. It's a long time.
If you're looking at an hour and 28 minutes and you go by your kind of standard 3-act story, that's a whole subplot in it. That's a whole section of stuff that I think would make this film at least better. I mean, as you said, you didn't find it that interesting because of musical numbers and very little character stuff, but I think at least the character stuff would make it feel a little bit more like a complete film and not quite so jarring to where all of a sudden they're here. It's like that, they were talking about, you get the telegram from their buddy because Harry has now been successful. He's got his own club. He's also doing a show on Broadway as well with Dolores, and he's doing all these other things. It's implied that he does cocaine. They don't say it, but they say, how are you able to do all these things? You need to get some sleep or whatnot. And I'm like getting this implication of like, someone say it. Someone saying he's doing the nose powder, because it is implied that the only way Harry could be doing this isn't through alcohol, because that makes you kind of, but hyper is cocaine. So it's kind of implied. It makes me wonder if there is another scene in there with him with a different type of drug to keep him going. But he gets this telegram from his buddy, but he's so blitzed that he misses the telegram, which says, hey, we're coming from Chicago and we're going to show up on Christmas. And then he has his high society party, and his buddies show up, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't get the telegram," and but we go from the telegram, which is implied it's like weeks out, and we jump to the party, and we're at the party. We're like, in fact, I was sitting there going, wait, are we at the party already? They literally were just talking about the party, and now boom, we're already in the middle of it. I mean, it's not even the start of it, folks. They're already at the dinner table, and Harry is 8 sheets to the wind at this point. I mean, again, silent picture, so he's really playing the drunk angle. I mean, you watch him, and he's just like, he's all wobbly. I mean, he's like so wobbly. It's like, I'm like, wow, if I was a bartender, I would definitely not serve that.
Yeah. I mean, he plays a really fun drunk, but this is the other weird thing about this. I think it's a combination. It's what you were talking about, the silent era carryover to the big acting. But I don't know Harry Richmond, the actor who plays Harry Raymond,
Right.
Not confusing at all. I don't know him from anything else, but in this movie, he is so flamboyant that I had a hard time believing that he was interested in Dolores more than Jimmy. Not that I'm trying to imply anything, but I was like, half the time I was like, am I watching the Birdcage? What is going on here? He's like so big and so, hey, yeah.
It's interesting too, because of our Miss Teddy Van Rensselaer, her her buddy that she hangs with, her friend, isn't her husband. And the way he's almost portrayed, I was almost wondering, I'm like, wait, is he her, gay friend of sort, almost, because of their interactions and the way he portrays the character. In some respects, it's almost implied maybe that he has open mind on relationships, so to speak.
There's your excise subplot. He wants Teddy to dump Harry so that he can move in on Harry. And we all know that's not
that's
no
that's
bueno
not gonna fly.
Right.
That's not gonna fly for the Hays Code. No, it just makes me wonder, because there's some implications there, possibly, with the relationship, the dynamic, that it's something that we've seen in more modern age. But if you look back then, it's like maybe not something quite expected. But the way he's portraying this character, this friend of hers, it's almost as if he and her have the same interests in,
right. Well, that's the thing is, I didn't really, I was just thinking of him as Teddy's husband. But yeah, there are some lines later on that suggest that there's something else going on there. I'm not quite sure what the deal is. Maybe that's in the excised footage or not. But one of the other things to think about is when you get like a Blu-ray or something, it says like 3 hours of deleted scenes. Not all of it is like complete scenes. Some of it is lines or parts of scenes that are cut out. So I'm wondering if there is actually 20 minutes of whole plot that were cut out, or if it was just like stuff from this 100 and hour
just
and 8 minutes,
certain lines or extended scenes or whatnot that were trimmed,
right,
because of it. And unfortunately we'll never know, and that's unless someone's got some pieces in in their basement. We will never know, and that is unfortunate.
Right, because some of the stuff we're talking about with like things that you're kind of figuring out with or theorizing with the subtext of Teddy's friend, there could have been lines in there that allude to that or even spell it out. And they're like, no, we got that's going. So what we have are these kind of existing scenes that are intact and make just enough sense to move the story along. But if you think about it too hard, you're like, wait, who are these people to each other? I don't know.
One of the other things that caught me, though, with these characters, and again, early cinema, and maybe it would have been different with silent, with silent performances and the description cards, but everybody seems to have short-term memory, because we have the boss, like we mentioned early on, of Harry and James, and he fires them. And then later on when Harry becomes a success, he's starting to talk to the guy again. But we don't have like, him rubbing it in the guy's face like he kind of promised at the beginning of the movie. They're talking, they're business partners now and whatnot. In fact, he's concerned about Harry being able to do all these things. And then we get to
Is that the same guy?
I thought it was the same guy. It looked like the same guy. It was
It's
hard to
entirely
tell.
possible. All these people look the same to me.
Well, I mean, it's the quality of the film too. It was really hard to distinguish actors because they all did have very similar looks to them at the time. I mean, we've run into that with a number of the older 30s films, and it's just the quality of the film and everything. It's hard to pick up distinct characteristics because of either the exposure or the film quality or whatnot. So everybody looks like all kinds of white people, but no, they all look the same.
Well, like really white, because like the medium
really
shows,
white,
a lot of them are blown out, so they barely have features to begin with.
They almost
Or
are
they're, like,
blown out with the
inky.
white stands and the music and everything. You're like, wow.
Right. It's almost impressionistic.
It's
But the other thing that drove me crazy was the early sound. So you've got people talking, but you've got this
the hiss, yeah.
Oh man.
That wonderful studio hiss because they recorded it live on stage. So you have the hiss. They try to reduce the hiss, but so you do have that going on. They actually cover that in Babylon. I always loved that segment in Babylon. I enjoy that film with Margot Robbie, and a lot of people don't, but
I never caught up with it. I still gotta watch Babylon.
but it covers that era of the transition between silent pictures and talkies. It's like the dark side of Singing in the Rain is what I equate Babylon to. It's like the mature equivalent. It's just the opposite end of the Venn diagram of mature, wholesome, wholesome is Singing on the Rain, mature Babylon, but they're very similar in theme. But they address that about the audio challenges they run into going from talkie to silent to talkie, and you get that hiss in there, or the sound of the projector, which they had to have in a booth and covered up in a soundproof booth while it was recording because the sound of the projector would get picked up by the mics. So yeah, there is the old school hiss for sure in the audio of this. And the music does sound like it's being played on a 78 Victorola, which I know what that sounds like actually. So because I got our good friend Mark Woolridge, Victorola from Goodwill that actually worked, and he played some 78s on it. And if you listen to that music and then you listen to the music in here, it sounds the same. So it's that kind of quality too. So it's still, there are a couple ambitious scenes in here as well. When we get to the main song, which is also the title of the movie, Puttin' on the Ritz, this is a big production. They've got a lot of dancers going on and it's a big number that they put in here, obviously because it's the name of the movie. But I was kind of impressed by that.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole chess kind of performance, and I was surprised because one of the earlier numbers, I think, had some black performers.
Yeah, that was
on
Puttin'
the
on the
stage.
Ritz. Yeah, that was the Puttin' on the
Right.
Ritz. Yeah.
But was that also the one with the chess pieces, or was that
No, that was Alice in
later on?
Wonderland was
No,
the
okay.
chess pieces one.
Right, but I thought there was some kind of a costumed gimmick with the black performers, but it was interesting because they weren't doing the black face thing. They had actual black actors or dancers doing these bits, but they didn't make a big deal out of it. And I wonder if that has to do with some of the original lyrics they're talking about with Harlem, and it was almost like the opposite of what you would expect to see from a period piece, and it was representative and not exploitative or trying to make some kind of like that. There was one character early on who at first glance you might think they were in blackface, but it was the classic hobo makeup where it was like the kind of the 5 o'clock shadow with the big white kind of teeth, but it was it was supposed to be a white guy.
The Buster Keaton type of hobo clown look is what they had, that old vaudeville type of hobo look. And because at first I looked at that and went, wait, do we have? And I was like, oh no, that's just hobo clown face. And I was looking at the performers on stage, and yeah, it was all black dancers and entertainers. From what I could tell, there wasn't any blackface going on, which was really cool to see for a 1930 piece like this. And a lot of time, I mean, they had a lot of performers. There had to be they had this split level stage during this performance that, there's got to be 50, 60 people dancing on it, and then they've got the building cutouts dancing as well. It's like this whole production was really cool, and of course they put everything into it because of being the title of the movie. So I imagine that's why they threw so much into it. But it is the most impressive outside of the Alice in Wonderland piece at the end. Those are the two biggest, I would say, pieces. But otherwise, yeah, the rest are supper club type performances and such. But where I was going to with those wishy-washy, suddenly people short memory or whatnot, we see Dolores later on with it looked like Teddy backstage during the Alice in Wonderland performance. It was Teddy, and I'm like, wait, why is she with Teddy? What? I understand Dolores has made it big now. Her name is on the marquee because Harry went blind drunk, or when drunk blind, however you want to put it. So Dolores is there, and then she goes running backstage after they do this very long, elaborate Alice in Wonderland gimmick. And I'm like, wait, is that Teddy? That is Teddy. Why is Teddy in the backstage? Why is she encouraging her to go out and sing with you? And I'm like, what did I miss?
It is a bit weird, but I can understand it because now Dolores is a popular performer,
Right.
who is, getting some notice by society. So it's cool to be her friend now, or to be, in her camp. Again, that's something that very well could have been in a missing scene, but I think thematically it kind of works because once
Yeah.
Harry was kind of falling apart because he was a drunk, during this
Mhm.
performance, she was like, I don't need this guy anymore. But hey, look, he's got this friend who I think it's even cooler story wise that uh, Teddy didn't want anything to do with Dolores because she thought she was beneath her and kind of low class.
Right.
And this is the ultimate comeuppance, I guess. It would have been nice to see. It would have been nice to see Dolores like kind of rope Teddy in, like, oh yeah, now we're friends, and then
Yeah.
kind of throw her under the bus at some point. But
Yeah, it would have been nice. And that's the only thing that threw me is because when we are first introduced to Dolores, there is a bit of sass to her. And then at the end, to see her talking with Teddy, who she, initially kind of looked at as a threat with Harry. Though you're right, it is a statement, and you do have to piece things together. You figure it out that these societal folks are just hanger-ons. While they talked about like Harry being the clown and being, with them and being the hanger-on to them, in reality, they're the hanger-on to whoever the star is. And you're right that comes across with Teddy being friends with Dolores. I just found it hard that Dolores would be authentically friendly to Teddy, though. That's
yeah.
the only thing that was the reciprocating. I was surprised to me that they seem to be reciprocated, but who knows? Maybe it was sitting on the cutting room floor. They made amends or whatnot, or that Teddy, saw true talent in Dolores, realized Harry was holding her back, and encourages her to be the star on Broadway. And Dolores, like you said, Dolores uses the opportunity to kind of get her opportunity with the societal folks who have the money. It's hard to say. I mean, it could go any number of ways of why they ended up the way they were.
Or there could be even a different layer to it, which is seizing that window that you just mentioned.
Mhm.
Dolores finds herself suddenly propelled into this arena where she's performing these big shows, getting the attention of high society, and having no idea how to deal with these people. So she kind of needs a friend. And Teddy, realizing that she's on the up or the come up, it's like, hey, I'll be your friend. And then it's like the symbiotic, really
Right.
messed up symbiotic relationship. The more we talk about this movie, Mark, the more I want to see someone like do a modern remake of
But
putting
on
on
the
the
Ritz.
Ritz. Yeah, a period piece.
I wouldn't mind to seeing that, and I'm actually surprised. Now, maybe Blue Skies is similar. You know, I haven't seen Blue Skies. That's going to be next week's film, but that has features Putting on a Ritz song, hence our Putting on the Ritz month, and that's got Fred Astaire. But I'm actually surprised this hasn't been remade because, especially with the history of things being cut as far as the footage in that. I would hope the cinephile in me hopes that there's the original script still surviving somewhere
I was
that you could
just gonna
remake.
bring that up. It is this in an archives? Like, who I didn't see who wrote the movie, but yeah,
Well, who wrote the movie was like three people: Billy K.
they're
Wells,
all dead.
James Gleason, and they're all passed. The director of this was Edward Sloman. He directed this. He did a lot of stuff in the early 30s and that, a lot of silent pictures in that. I think this probably may have been his biggest film that many people talk about. Yeah, otherwise he did a lot of silent stuff beforehand. So the director is not exactly known, but I would love to know if an original script has survived somewhere, and if someone could do a remake of this. Because talk about remake fire. We talk about how there's sequels and IPs in that. Talk about your opportunity to do a remake. Now, do Putting on the Ritz remake. Like you said, make it a period piece. I mean,
And the thing is, you could just take the movie as it exists now without having to find a script to find out, what officially
yeah.
happened in the story, and just, do like what we're doing, extrapolate, make your own version of it, make it better. I think that'd be a really cool movie.
I think it would too, because there's a lot of nuggets of interesting. I mean, the characters, I like the characters in that, Dolores in that, and even Goldie and all that. You look at them, and you can see, as I mentioned earlier, you could kind of see a Danny Kaye type relationship with Bing Crosby, or later on, like from White Christmas is almost has a similar type of relationship. If you think about it, from the Putting on the Ritz, White Christmas has a similar. You've got two buddies who are on the outs, kind of a vaudeville. They hook up with the lady pair, the ladies who have their own act, and they end up putting on a performance. I mean, yeah, the story takes a turn because of the war in it, but still, that kind of has that formula with that dynamic with those four as well. We've seen it a number of times in other films after Putting on the Ritz, where you got the two buddies and the two friends or sisters or whatnot in entertainment, and they pair up and end up making it big, or at least some of them do.
It's funny in the Patreon show, which folks, should subscribe so you can hear what we're talking about. We're discussing Roger Corman and how influential he was directly or indirectly with the filmmakers and the movies that came after him during his heyday. I kind of get that feeling here. Like, your White Christmas connection is spot on. I wonder how many people took the template of Putting on the Ritz and said, "Oh, I'm going to put my own spin on it." Because that movie was old and kind of lame. I mean, we're talking about difference of 20 years or so with when did White Christmas come out? That was the 50s.
It was because it was just after the war, because they were doing the war veterans, and they were their old commander was the one running the resort that didn't have any snow, which, by the way, I just picked up the White Christmas album from a rummage sale over the weekend. So hey, yeah, 1954 was White Christmas.
I saw White Christmas for the first time like 2 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, I'd
Wow.
never seen it because, I mean, we've kind of talked about this, Mark. I did not like musicals in any
Oh, sure, yeah.
fashion until, I know you're gonna love me for it, La La Land. Now, whatever you think of that movie, it was the gateway drug to get me to appreciate musicals, and so now I'm kind of catching up, and White Christmas was on my list, and I finally checked it off a couple years back. That is a wonderful movie. I
Isn't it?
love and Singing in the Rain I saw for the first time a couple years before that. I think it's the musicals that are about movies and or showbiz. That's right in my sweet spot. Yeah.
And yeah, no, that's awesome. And regardless of how I feel about La La Land. No, there's a lot of elements that are good about La La Land. Don't get me wrong. I didn't hate the film, just didn't fall in love with it like many. But there's some wonderful odes to other musicals, and I can see how that would be a gateway for you for sure, because it's not like a full on musical like a lot of people may have portrayed it as, but it's got a lot of nuggets in there, and especially influences, especially American in Paris would be one. You like La La Land, you should check out American in Paris as well, because there's a lot of nods to that in La La Land to that musical, and it's a good musical as well. Not my favorite, but I still enjoy it quite a bit, especially for the extended dance number near the end. So as far as putting on the Ritz, yeah, I mean, this goes back to what we've been talking about, and that's why I'm digging this year of doing. I'm glad I picked these early 30s films, because you look at these early 30s films, and regardless of how you think of how they were made or if they're interesting or not, you see a lot of templates, a lot of nuggets, a lot of tropes of where they started and what spawned from these early 90-year-old films, and how we're still seeing some of those stories in variations today. You know?
Right, and that's the thing is, like, you're right, they're not all gems, but they're all at least interesting. I mean, watching modern movies, it's very hard to be surprised anymore. Like,
Mhm.
we talked about The Fall Guy last week on Kicking the Seat. I'm
Yeah,
like, that's the most bland, like, it's at the same time generic and also trying to do something different but failing miserably, I think,
sure,
movie.
sure.
But then I watched Put on the Ritz, and even though it's not the greatest movie, there's a whole bunch of weird stuff in it. Like, I don't know what still is going on with Harry Richmond and his bizarre persona that he's got. But then you look at the Alice in Wonderland sequences and how elaborate it is. Like, wait a second, I would pay money today to see something like that, like the Chicago Theater. It's amazing. You don't
Mhm.
expect to see something that elaborate in, oh, this quaint 1930s film. You think it's all going to be the supper club sequences, but no, it's pretty fantastic.
It is. It's just like when we watched M, or we've watched a few of these others, to where you look at the set pieces and the things that they did back then in 1930s, and you're like, wow, it's like I did not expect to see stuff like that. Big, huge, empty room, and a Scarface. You get to see stuff like that. You're like, wow, you do not expect those things. But looking at these things, you can see the origins, and it's fun to see where these things come from that we take for granted in many of the movies, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, and then you're just like, oh wait, this is where that came from. Okay, cool. And just a little nugget of trivia, Joan Bennett, who plays Dolores, Suspiria fans out there, she was in Suspiria, so
Who was
there
she
you
in
go.
Suspiria?
Joan Bennett in Suspiria was Madame Blanc in the original Suspiria
Look,
from
'cause,
1977.
right. There's something else it's great about these old-timey movies, especially like the silent era and the dawn of talkies. There's some hot actresses in the I don't know if it's the fashion or just that classic look, but, like, I mean, because she got some really nice close-ups, and it's not like, oh, she's a beach bod,
No,
babe or
but
something like that. She's just, like, a beautiful,
w- w-
well-photographed woman. You
w-
just instantly fall in love.
when you first meet Dolores, she's an attractive woman, and that's part of the role. Is That's what catches Harry's eye, as he looks. He's a skirt chaser, if you will, because
Which that's a stretch. That's some straight up science fiction, but we've already
Well,
talked about that.
we've talked about that, but he is in within the realm of the film anyway, considered a looker, I guess. Though he looks maybe like more like a dime store James Cagney. I'm not sure. But yeah,
If Liberace and James Cagney
there you go.
went on
Yeah,
a double date with, Milton Berle
yeah.
and no, sorry.
No,
Stop.
yeah, just stop there. We don't want to go that. That's a different movie altogether. So, in any case, folks, I think we'll wrap it up here a little bit shorter tonight. But yeah, putting on the Ritz. It is one of the films that I'm glad I put on this list, because it is the prime example of what happened to films during the Hays Code period, to where they got in front of a panel who said, no, this is not good. This is we don't want people to see this. And then they would re-release the film cut up and censored, and you get this, something that you look at, you go, man, there's stuff here. I know there's stuff I'm missing that we're not gonna we're gonna unfortunately never be able to probably see.
And that's the thing that drove me nuts about it. I mean, my experience with the Hays Code, my knowledge of it is pretty much limited to what we've been talking about this year. But these movies, so far from what I've seen, they're not advocating any kind of lascivious behavior that would be regulated by the code. For whatever was cut out of this movie, in the end, the characters are still good people, or they get their comeuppance, or there's some kind of redemption arc. It's not like, people are going around murdering folks, or sleeping around saying, hey, this is the way you should be, everybody. I think it's clear from a lot of these storylines that whatever was cut out would have just aided the message at the end of these films, which is like, hey, you do bad stuff, you're going to get in trouble, either go to jail or cosmically, or you're going to dead. So that's what's kind of frustrating about this. Like, you can show something without endorsing it, and that just drives me crazy.
Agreed. So yeah, there you have it, folks. Putting on the Ritz. It's on YouTube's and various other places, public domain and such. The only version out there is the one we talked about tonight. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So always, if you've seen the film, leave your comments. Always interested in your thoughts. And now, since this is a rated PC for pre-code film, we have to decide what our next film for next month is going to be for the month of June. So we've got our wheel of random here. What's left on the wheel of random is Safe in Hell, Night Nurse, Redheaded Woman, Blonde Venus, The Little Giant, Murders in the Zoo, and a Maniac. So let's see what we get here. So round and around and around she goes. Where she stops, we're not sure. And it stops on Safe in Hell, 1931. Let me pull that one up quick, in case people aren't familiar with this. This is a 1931 thriller, pre-code melodrama. After accidentally killing a man who raped her and forced her into prostitution, a New Orleans woman flees to the Caribbean island. While she awaits her fiancé, the vicious local police chief sets his sights on her.
Oh my god! Is this like this is the precursor to I Spit on Your Grave? What the hell?
I am not sure, but it is a 1931, A Safe in Hell. So that one I do believe is on the Internet Archive. I will we will watch this, and that I saw the synopsis of that, and I'm like, oh man, I've got to go with that. I am not sure what I'm going to call next month with that film. I think it's going to be On the Run, but we'll see what I come up with for the title. But I do have the other movies that are similar in theme to this one of sorts, that involve a murder and a person on the run. So
I was going to go in a different direction with the rape and revenge angle, Mark. You could have called it A Little R&R.
Ooh, yeah. No,
it's probably whatever you've got planned is probably lots better.
That's. I mean, I appreciate the creativity. Don't get me wrong, but some people may misinterpret that and not necessarily have the dark sense of humor. And canceled. So
yes, your idea, I'm sure, is less actionable than
so look for that soon on specialmarkproductions.com, where I do post what films we have coming up here on the Spoiler Room. Please don't forget to subscribe and all that fun stuff here on our YouTube channel and such, where we do the live stream, or on our podcast channel, or in both places. I won't fault you for liking both places. That'd be awesome. But where else but you like How about you like Ian's stuff? Ian, licensed to shill, sir, for you. Please, the floor is yours. Tell folks where they can find you at.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com, as well as on YouTube right here. Just look up Kicking the Seat, and you'll find me there doing roundtable reviews and interviews and reviews and all sorts of fun stuff. This week, we're doing a live stream of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central. So if you get a chance, pop on over, like, subscribe, join the conversation. It's a lot of fun. And I'm also here on Monday nights talking with Mark about classic movies, including this Safe in Hell, which I cannot wait to see what that synopsis looks like in a 1931 film. Wow.
So yeah, I'm not quite sure what it's going to be, either On the Run or just Wanted, but it's going to be a series of films about people who are on the run for either accidentally killing someone or falsely being accused of killing someone or whatnot. So to give you a hint of what films we will be looking at Dark City. We will be watching The Fugitive and a film called Nightfall. So yeah, all films about folks on the run from because they're wanted for murder. So I'm not quite sure the title of it yet, but that is what our theme is going to be for next month. So give you a little taste of what's coming. And yes, please check out Kicking the Seat and all this wonderful entertainment and interesting interviews and such that he's got there, and talking about films that aren't out yet, but to wet your whistle for when they do finally come out. So until next time, folks, we will just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Putting on the Ritz.